Welcome to the Deep Dives.
Hello.
Today we're really digging into the ongoing criminal trial of Sean Combs.
That's right. We've got the specific source material you shared, a Wikipedia article excerpt, and we're going to break it down.
Exactly. Think of us as your guides through this specific information. Our job is to pull out the crucial bits, cut through any complexity, and give you a solid grasp of what this source says about the situation.
Yep, purely based on the reading provided. We'll walk you through, the background stuff, the accusations that came before the trial.
Then the federal investigation, how that led to the indictment.
And then dive into the trial itself. Key moments, witness testimony described in the source, that kind of thing.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we even get to the trial, the source material traces things back a bit. It talks about civil suits against Combs going back to 2017.
It does, but it really emphasizes how things ramped up more recently. It flags some very serious allegations surfacing in late 2024.
Right, specific ones, like accusations of raping a 13-year-old girl.
Yes, and also separate claims from 3 men alleging rape and sexual assault, plus a sexual battery claim from a former male employee.
And another one about drugging and sexually assaulting a woman. Lots coming out then.
Definitely. And the source gives particular attention to the civil suit from his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura.
Yes, alleging rape, trafficking, and physical assault over, nearly 10 years?
That's what the source states she alleged. These civil actions seem to form a kind of backdrop, a lead-up to the federal case described here.
Makes sense. So, building on that, the source then gets into the federal investigation phase. There was a big public moment, right? March 25th, 2024.
That's the one. Federal agents reportedly questioning Combs at an airport, Miami Opa-locka Airport, it says.
And they seized his electronics before he could, leave the country for a vacation.
That's what's reported here, yes. And, crucially, at the exact same time,
Raids were happening.
Coordinated raids by Homeland Security on his properties in L.A., New York, and Miami, confiscating computers, other devices, part of the investigation.
Okay. And the reading actually lists some things reportedly found during those searches.
It does. It specifically mentions various narcotics. Ketamine, ecstasy, GHB are listed.
And weapons, too.
Yes, including 3 illegally modified AR-15 rifles, according to the source. And then there's this rather specific detail.
Which is?
More than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant.
1,000. Wow, okay. That's quite the list of reported findings from the investigation.
And the source connects these findings from the investigation directly to the next stage, the indictment.
Right. So the investigation leads to formal charges.
Exactly. We learned a grand jury handed down an indictment on September 16th, 2024.
And it laid out 3 specific felony counts.
Very serious ones, yes. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy. Count 2, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. And count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution.
Can you quickly break down what those mean in this context based on the source?
Sure. So based on how the prosecution's case is described later, the racketeering conspiracy, that's about allegedly using his business, his whole enterprise, for criminal stuff, facilitating and covering up illegal acts.
Okay, using the business as a front, essentially.
That seems to be the allegation described. Then sex trafficking. Well, the charge specifies by force, fraud, or coercion. So allegedly compelling people into commercial sex acts through those means.
Got it. And the last one, transportation.
Transportation to engage in prostitution. That points to moving people, presumably across state lines, for those purposes. These are the core federal charges the trial is focused on, according to this reading.
Understood. And the source says he was arrested the same day the indictment came down. In Manhattan.
Correct, and jailed at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn.
Then the arraignment was the next day, September 17th. That's when he enters his plea, right?
Yes, and he pleaded not guilty to all counts. The source points out that the judge, Robin Tarnofsky, denied him bail right away, ordered him kept in federal custody.
And that bail denial stuck. Another judge reviewed it.
It did. Just a day later, District Court Judge Andrew L. Carter, Jr. upheld the decision. The reason cited, according to the material, concerns about potential threats and intimidation towards witnesses.
Right. And there's an interesting bit mentioned from the defense's argument trying to get bail about that 2016 video.
Ah, yes. The surveillance footage showing Combs kicking and dragging Cassie Ventura. The defense reportedly tried to frame it. Well,
how?
They argued it was part of a 10-year loving relationship and claimed it only fell apart because of Ventura's jealousy over his infidelity. That was their explanation, as reported here.
A loving relationship. And Judge Carter Jr.'s response to that specific point is noted too, isn't it?
It is. Reportedly, he asked, "What's love got to do with that?" Pretty direct question, highlighted in the source.
Yeah, definitely pointed. Okay, so that whole bail fight sets the stage.
Yeah.
And brings us to the trial itself, which the source says started May 5th, 2025.
That's the date given, Federal District Court in Lower Manhattan, and the presiding judge is Arun Subramanian.
And before the arguments, jury selection. That's detailed too. Kicked off May 12th.
Yep, took nearly a full week. They went through about 100 potential jurors, apparently.
And the final panel?
12 jurors, 6 alternates, described as 8 men, 4 women, all New Yorkers, middle-aged or older, the source says, and their identities are kept private.
Standard practice in high-profile cases.
Yeah.
Okay, so jury seated. Then we get to the opening statements. The source outlines both sides.
It does. The prosecution, we're told, really hammered home their main argument, that Combs ran his businesses for criminal purposes.
Right, using them to commit crimes and cover them up.
Exactly. Alleging he used his status and power to, quote, violently force 2 ex-girlfriends into unwanted sex acts.
And victimizing employees, too. Threats, kidnapping, sexual assault mentioned.
Yes, those allegations were part of the opening, tying it all back to the conspiracy and racketeering charges, like a pattern of behavior enabled by the enterprise.
Okay. And the defense's opening. How did they respond, according to the source?
Well, they apparently conceded Combs has a temper and can be physical, which is quite an admission to start with.
Yeah, seems like it. But their main argument.
They argued the relationships with the ex-girlfriends were consensual, even if toxic.
Right.
Characterized the accusations largely as a money grab.
Ah, the financial motive defense.
Right. And crucially, they pushed back hard on the idea that his personal life and business were intertwined for criminal reasons, trying to separate the two to challenge that core racketeering claim.
So, setting up a clear conflict there. Personal versus enterprise.
Precisely. And this is where the source really gets into the meat of the trial the witness testimony presented.
Okay, yeah, the material you sent highlights quite a bit here. It starts with Cassie Ventura's testimony, calls it extensive 4 days on the stand.
4 days, yeah. Detailing, quote, a decade of intense abuse allegations.
So, a central piece of the prosecution's case, clearly.
And was her account backed up by others, according to the source? It says others testified claiming they saw violent acts towards her. A makeup artist is mentioned, and also a male escort. Seems like corroborating testimony.
Okay, and there was testimony from people who identified as escorts.
Yes, 2 witnesses described as escorts claimed they were paid by Combs. This would seem directly relevant to those trafficking and prostitution charges.
Right. Then there's the testimony from Kid Cudi. That seemed a bit different.
It did. His claims were reportedly outside the main sexual misconduct allegations. He testified Combs broke into his home.
And firebombed his car, organized it.
That's what he claimed, yes. And Cudi apparently believed it was revenge for his relationship with Ventura.
Wow. The source mentions something about the judge related to Cudi's testimony. Fingerprint cards.
Ah, right. Judge Subramanian apparently told the jury to disregard some specific testimony about destroying fingerprint cards related to that incident, and then he immediately denied a defense motion for a mistrial based on that. So, quick judicial management there.
Interesting. And after Cudi testified, the judge made a comment about the trial's timeline.
Yeah, reportedly suggested the trial should aim to wrap up by the 4th of July. Gives you a sense of the projected pace at that point.
Okay. Who else testified, according to the reading?
Well, there was Ventura's former stylist, claimed to have seen Combs being violent multiple times.
And said they hid from him.
Yes, that he and Ventura hid, quote, too many times to count to avoid being, quote, attacked.
Heavy stuff. And a former assistant testified anonymously. Mia.
Correct. Referred to as Mia in the material, she claimed Combs personally abused her.
And there was a courtroom moment there, too, with the defense attorney.
Yeah, the source says a defense attorney suggested she was lying, the prosecution objected, and the judge reportedly responded by saying he'd be, quote, on the lookout for abusive conduct, presumably aimed at the defense's questioning style.
Keeping things in line. Okay, then there's the hotel security guard testimony. This seems key.
Very key, based on the description. This is the guard from the hotel where that 2016 video was filmed.
The one showing Combs and Ventura? What did the guard claim?
Reportedly testified that Combs paid him $100,000 to bury the video clip.
$100,000. Wow. And the prosecution is using that how?
They're arguing it's a bribe, according to the source. and presenting it as direct evidence supporting the racketeering conspiracy charge, showing that alleged pattern of illegal activity and cover-up connected to his operations.
Got it. Connecting the dots for the racketeering claim.
Exactly. The source also notes the judge had to warn Combs directly around June 5th.
Warn him about what?
About making facial expressions or, like, interacting with the jury, even mentioned potentially removing him from court if it continued.
Intense, and this was after someone else got removed.
Yeah, a heckler had apparently been removed just 2 days before, so the judge was clearly focused on maintaining courtroom decorum.
Okay. And there was more testimony after that warning.
Yes, the very next day, according to the source, another former girlfriend testified anonymously.
And her testimony involved.
She described being pressured into these hotel nights, she called them, often lasting 30 hours straight.
30 hours. Doing what?
During which she claimed she'd have unprotected sex with male escorts while the defendant watched.
Right. That seems to speak directly to those sex trafficking and prostitution charges again.
It appears highly relevant to those specific counts, based on the description.
Okay, so that covers the main witness testimony highlighted. The source then briefly touches on some reactions outside the courtroom.
Just a couple of notable ones, yeah. It mentions former President Donald Trump being asked about a potential pardon for Combs.
During a press conference, what did he say?
Reportedly said he wasn't following the trial closely, but would, quote, certainly look at the facts if it ever came to that. A non-committal political answer, basically.
Standard stuff. And rapper 50 Cent reacted to that.
He did on Instagram, apparently. The source notes he posted about Trump's comment, saying he planned to contact Trump to persuade him not to pardon Combs.
What did he write exactly?
Quote, I'm going to reach out so he knows how I feel about this guy. So, making his opposition pretty clear.
Right. Just public reactions noted in the source, not part of the trial evidence itself.
Exactly. Included as part of the broader public conversation around the trial.
Okay, so pulling it all together, what does this mean for you, the listener? We've gone through the background, the civil suits, the federal investigation with those reported findings.
The specific felony charges in the indictment, racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation for prostitution, the whole bail situation.
And then we really dug into the trial moments described in this source. The opening arguments and especially that detailed witness testimony.
Right. From Cassie Ventura's extensive account to the corroborating witnesses, the escorts, Kid Cootie's claims, the stylist, the anonymous assistant Mia, the hotel guard alleging a bribe.
And the other anonymous ex-girlfriend describing those hotel nights. All based just on what's in this reading.
So this deep dive, hopefully, gives you a really structured way to understand the information presented in this particular source. It lays out the narrative as described here.
And for you, the learner, when you consider all these details, I mean, the sheer volume and the specific nature of the testimony described here.
Yeah, you have Ventura's decade-long account, specific acts of alleged violence, the alleged bribe, the claims about forced sex acts, even things like the firebombing claim.
And how the prosecution, according to the source, is trying to weave all of that together to prove these broad, complex charges like racketeering and sex trafficking, while the defense tries to pick it apart or offer other explanations. It does raise a big question.
It really does. How do all these individual pieces of testimony, these specific alleged incidents reported in the source, some directly related to the charges, some maybe less directly, how do they combine or maybe clash in building the overall case?
How does the prosecution use these very specific, often disturbing details to construct the larger narrative required for charges like racketeering conspiracy, which involves showing a whole criminal enterprise?
And conversely, how does the defense, as described here, try to dismantle that narrative piece by piece, arguing maybe toxic relationship here, money grab there, trying to keep those personal allegations separate from the business operations? It's about how the specific details feed or don't feed into the broader legal definitions.
There's definitely a lot to think about processing all the information presented in just this one source. Hopefully this deep dive has helped you zero in on the key nuggets and understand the framework of the trial as it's laid out here.